Good evening. Welcome to Jackson Snyder Presents. Nice to see you out tonight. It sure is. I didn't expect to see anybody tonight, and especially Mr. Coleman there. Great to see you on. I hope you like King Crimson. Really started out nice and mellow. Then it goes into some crazy stuff as usual. Captain Kirk. Yeah, that guy looked like him. My grandmother told me I looked like Charles Nelson Riley. Yeah. Do you remember who Charles Nelson Riley was? Well, I didn't take that as a compliment, actually. Tonight, we're going to talk about the tale of two Yahwehs. And I hope you didn't take offense at the picture that I had on here. Show you again. Believe it or not, archaeologists found these two figures, whatever they are, who knows? And they identified these as the faces of Yahweh and his consort. Can you imagine that? Look at these things. Talk about insulting. Insulting. All right. A tale of two Yahwehs, not three, but two and one. A brief introduction to this subject. I'm sure that you know a lot about it, and maybe you could help me in some areas on this. But I believed in the concept of two Yahwehs for a long time. And I just happened to find in one of the Gospels this saying, where there are three Elohim, let them be divine. Where there are the two or the one, I am with the one. And that's a red letter saying from Yahshua's Egyptian sayings, namely the Gospel of Thomas. So we're going to start right at the beginning, Genesis 1:1. It says, Elohim, plural, created the sky and the earth. Now, we need to talk about this word Elohim and plural words in Hebrew. The title Elohim in this example is known as a grammatical plurality. Though Elohim is plural, it's understood as singular in this case. And what it's saying is the Almighty One, the El of Elohim, Deuteronomy 6:4, listen, Israel, Yahweh our Elohim, Yahweh is one. And again, the plural is used there. And the name is used. Or Elohim, plural, is united, or echad, singular. It's worthy of note that in the biblical Hebrew, as well as many other languages, including English, the customary grammatical plurality of a word is often simply that, a grammatic plural, not a physical unity. So when we're speaking of Yahweh, our Elohim, though Elohim is plural, it's applied as singular. Here's an example for you that came out of my mind. When the professor was lecturing, he never referred to himself as I. He used we to refer to himself. I guess that's his chosen pronoun. Who are the we the professor is talking about? Well, the answer is he's addressing himself as we, not because there are necessarily others who speak with him, but rather by using a grammatical plural, we, he casts the illusion that he's more informed than he really is, leading you to tacitly believe that he has a bevy of acolytes, a bevy of followers behind him. Have you ever heard a lecturer speak of himself, herself as we? I do it sometimes, but that's how we see the word Elohim as being, yes, plural, but also singular depending on how it's used. Maybe I could give a few other examples here. Let's see. The grammatical plural often connotes quintessence, uniqueness, or might rather than plurality, and Elohim does, though it might connote both too. Take, for instance, the phrase King of Kings. It does not refer to a king, kings of kings, but to a king of unsurpassed kingship. Here's another. Shir HaShirim. Shir is singular. Shirim is plural. Shir HaShirim doesn't refer to a song of songs, but to a song that is the quintessential best song. And Yamim, or Rabim, refers to a great sea, as easily as to a great or many seas. A clue to this is the Hebrew grammatical term for plural, which is Lashon Rabim, meaning it's a term of grandiosity. Sometimes they call it the majestic plural. The Queen often used it when she was giving speeches. She often called herself we and referred to herself in plural. Genesis 2:7. Yahweh Elohim, plural. Yahweh singular, plural. Formed a man of dust from the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a chayim nefesh, a living being. Elohim, the title, and Yahweh, the personal name, are teamed up for the very first time right here. Genesis 2:7. El and Yah are one, but Yahweh is still Elohim, grammatical plural, or as some would say, of the spiritual family of Elohim. That's the God of gods, his, her, its actual name, insofar as we know. Okay, take a passage from the Torah. I know this is familiar to you, from Genesis 19:24. Then Yahweh rained on Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire from Yahweh out of the sky. That's pretty confusing unless you see two Yahwehs, one who works in the fourth dimension and can't be seen in this, and the Yahweh who works in three dimensions, sometimes called the angel of Yahweh in the scripture. It's evident from this passage that there are in some way two Yahwehs, one in the upper and one in the lower, consisting of what seems to be a plurality of beings in unity and purpose and action, but not a unity in substance. That is, what they consist of. Yes, two can be united, purpose, what they want to do, goals, even pretty much in their personalities, but they can't be united in substance. If you were unified in substance, one couldn't appear in one place and also in the other place at the same time. Now, that's a universal three-dimensional law. It doesn't carry forth in the fourth dimension, but in three it does. A person, whoever it may be, is able only to be in one place at a time. Though science is telling us now that one can be in two places at once, yet remain 1,000,000 miles apart, at least in the quantum realm. Now, this is a paradox. That is an absurd or a self-contradictory statement that, when properly investigated, could prove to be true. So we learn that you can be in two places at once if you happen to be a photon or some other quantum particle. We can't explain that yet. We can't even see why a proton or a photon or an electron can possibly be in two places at once. And sometimes one proton is in two places at once, 1,000,000 or 1,000,000,000 miles apart. Who can explain that? And if you're not looking at photons, they form a wave. But if you're looking at them, they are just singularities. That's hard to explain. Go to the Nevi'im, Zechariah 3:2. Zechariah is an apocalypse most of the way through, probably the earliest one that we have. Yahweh said to Satan, Yahweh rebuke you, Satan. Yes, Yahweh, who has chosen Jerusalem, rebuke you. Isn't this a burning stick plucked out of the fire? Or in the Peshitta, Peshitta has, may the Malach of Yahweh rebuke you. So there's been a little bit of a difference in the translation from the Aramaic. We actually have the Malach, or the angel of Yahweh rebuke you, whereas in the apocalypse of Zechariah, we don't. One, Yahweh says to Satan, Yahweh rebuke you, Satan. Where is this Yahweh? And would Yahweh be that close to Satan? We know that, for instance, Yahshua was that close to Satan. Being in the desert with Satan, had interaction with Satan. Here's another example from the Brit Chadashah, John 5:43, probably my favorite chapter in the entire scripture. Yahshua says to the audience there, I have come in my Father's name, and you do not receive me. If another comes in his own name, him you will receive. Yahshua, meaning Yahweh saves, appeared in his Father's name, Yahu, which means I exist, or I am, or I'm becoming. I read is probably the best translation of that name Yahweh. The name Yahu is in the name Yahushua. But Yahweh is not found in the names Yeshua or Jesus or Emmanuel. This is an important reason why we Yahadis don't go with Yeshua or Yahshua. Yah is not in there as required. Something else is. I get so disappointed at some Hebrew roots people that are using Yeshua, term and a name made up in modern Judaism to cast insults upon the Son of Man. Because in Hebrew, Yeshua is an anagram. And right now I can't tell you what it stands for, but my brother opened that up to me. He's fluent in Hebrew and lived in Jerusalem for a year and a half, learned the language. He opened all kinds of new ideas regarding the modern Hebrew and how it was used to take esteem away from Yahshua, because those people don't believe in him. John 17, 25, 26, Ava Hazadik, the world has not known you, but I have known you. Ava Hazadik means righteous Father. And these know that you have sent me. I made known to them your name, and I will continue to make it known, that the love with which you have loved me may be within them, even as I am within them. This is a marvelous prophetic word. Look, I made known to them your name. I did it. That was illegal, strictly illegal in those days. Could bring a charge of blasphemy, even using the name. It was not permitted to be used. It was permitted to be concealed. They translate Exodus 3:3 as my name to be concealed, rather than my name to be remembered. He's bringing his Father's name and giving it out freely. In Jewish Mishnah, specifically the Toledot Yeshu text, we have Yahshua portrayed as selling the name, making it for sale to anybody that wanted to know it, and evidently not many people did in his day. Selling the name. In his intercessory prayer, Yahshua defines his mission to make his heavenly Father's name known to his followers, at least. His Father's name, Yahweh, had been hidden away by the religious for a long time by this time on account of the Pharisees. And the more I thought about it, maybe the name was hidden away for a good reason. But I believe Yahshua came in part to restore that name. Even by talking about his own name, he tells others what his Father's name is. Highly illegal. Let those scoffers in Israel call him Yeshua, but don't ask me to. Matthew 5:19. Truly, truly I say to you, the Son can do nothing of his own accord, but only what he sees the Father doing. For whatever he does, the Son does the same. For the Father loves the Son and shows him all that he himself is doing, and greater works than these will he show him, so that he might do them, that you may marvel. Just how literal is Yahshua being here? Just how logical. This is one of those kinds of sayings that lost him his followers. Greater works he's going to do, that you may marvel. The Gospel of John, chapter 9, 8 through 9, the neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar were saying, "Is this not the man who used to sit and beg?" Some said, "It is he." Others said, "No, but he's like him." And then, strange little thing here at the end, he kept saying, "I am." In Greek, the holy name, the memorial name, is indicated by the words ego eimi. Now, eimi is all that's necessary to say I am. But the addition of the ego, a subject for that short sentence, is an anagram for the name Yahweh, I am. But who kept saying, I am, I am, I am, ego eimi, ego eimi? The blind man, I believe. He's calling out for the creative Father. And anytime that configuration is used in the New Testament, it is an anagram or a fill-in for Yahweh, ego eimi. Unfortunately, they don't show you that in any of the texts itself. Most of the texts just have eimi, I am. But the ego eimi, they should show that, so we know when the sacred name is referred to. Exodus 3:15. The memorial name, or the name to remember, Elohim said moreover to Moshe, "You shall tell the children of Israel this: Yahweh, the Elohim of your fathers, the Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Yitzhak, and the Elohim of Yaakov has sent me to you. This, that is Yahweh, is my name forever, and this is my memorial to all generations." That's perfectly clear to me. In fact, I've never seen a Bible that used any other name except maybe Yahuwah, and we know that's a modern derivative as well. I've got something for you that I meant to pass out to you at the beginning. If I can find, where are we? Because I'm screen sharing. I don't know what was there. Were my texts there? What screen I was sharing? Anybody know?
Yes, it was the picture of the two Yahwehs.
Oh, yes. How horrible that I put you up with that. The Father and Son are in one accord in everything they do. The Son sees what the Father's doing and does likewise. I can just see almost a child following his father or mother around imitating what they do. But Yahshua, the Son, is somehow able to see the Father when we haven't been able to. So they're in one accord in everything they do, but not in everything they are. It's obvious that Father and Son are not the same being or of the same substance again. And this is the problem with Trinitarianism, which dogmatically states that the Trinity, three, is of one substance, which Scripture says nowhere. And I've laid out numerous passages right here that says there's actually two Yahwehs, one of heaven and one of earth. So that's my problem with Trinitarianism. The Athanasian Creed, which was the first full-out, pedal-to-the-metal Trinitarian creed, makes it very clear that they're not only in unity of everything else, but they're the same. That defies logic. And as I mentioned before, in three-dimensional reality, it's impossible. Clearly, we're dealing with two entities here, though, a Father and his Son, working on a building of unity and oneness, not two people in one with a double mind. If they were the same in substance, wherever one was physically, whatever locality that they dwelt, the other had to be there also. And if they're of the same substance, we wouldn't be here today because the great Creator would have died with Yahshua on the stake, and the world would have fallen apart that instant. But Yahshua says, "Why have you forsaken me?" Of course, he's just quoting the Psalms, but nevertheless, that's an indication too that they're not the same substance, and that Elohim, that is Creator Yahweh, was not there with him. If that was the case, then one would eventually be dragging around a corpse. Here's a verse from Kata Matya, my translation of it, of Matthew 16:17. Yahshua, in answering, said to him, "You are Rav, Shimeon ben Yonah, for body and blood did not reveal this to you, but Avi in the Shamayim. I also tell you, you are a stone." The word there is Petros. It's masculine. Petros, stone. So upon this, the stone, Petra, that's feminine. We're not talking about Peter here. Said Yahshua just says, "Yes, you're a stone. Okay, giving you this nickname." But upon this, the stone, and then there's a different word there. It sounds very similar, but it means something else. That I will build a home place. Oikodomeso. That means house build. House build. Oikos is house. Domego is build. I will build a home place. I will house build for my called out ones, and the gates of Hades will not succeed against it. Literal translation. What is to be constructed is built right into this verb. As I mentioned, oikos, we get the word economy from that. That means house. And the verb being oikodomeso, first person. Tifa in Aramaic and Petra in Greek mean rock, stone, or cliff, or foundation. You might recall that Petra, the second stone in this chapter, is also a city on the east bank of the Jordan, where early believers gathered for refuge and worship. Yahshua may just be saying that Petros, masculine, which means Tifa, stone, Aramaic. Petros is the house builder, and Petra is the place where it would be built. That makes a lot more sense to me than building a church, as it says in some translation, my church, upon the back of Tifa. Exodus 23, 20, 21. Behold, I send an angel before you to guard you on the way and to bring you to the place I have prepared. Give heed to him and hearken to his voice. Do not rebel against him, for he will not pardon your transgression. For my name is in him. That comes from Exodus, but I put this passage to music. I know you're dying to hear the angel of Yahweh.
I sent an angel before you to keep you one that never away. Oh, my angel models my virtue and sees that you do as I say. Listen.
The question is Yahshua also the angel of Yahweh? We see in the Old Testament that the angel of Yahweh, or just called Yahweh, comes down to earth and eats lunch with some famous people. Oh, maybe I just can dig out the passage here. The angel of Malach comes to guard you on the way and to bring you to the place that I have prepared. Give heed to him, hearken to his voice. Do not rebel against him, for he will not pardon your transgression. For my name is in him. Perfection is in him. Did you ever think about some of those little prophetic words that come into your mind? All of a sudden, you're making a decision, and then you have a feeling. Maybe you ought to do something else. Do you think that the Malach of Yahweh is still with us today? And what form? The mission of the angel or messenger or a Malach to the Israelites was to guard and to lead, at least the primary men and women of the cult. I don't use that term pejoratively. Yahweh says that the Israelites dare not rebel, for his Malach has power to forgive sins because the name Yahu was in him. We have shown that Yahweh's name was in Yahshua, and that by his own admittance he came in his Father's name. But earlier in Moses' time, Yahweh is referring to Yahshua, Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' younger assistant, who we know, as I just mentioned, as Joshua, the one who fit the battle of Jericho. So we've got a double Joshua thing here. We've got a Joshua that succeeds Moses, and we have a Yahshua who comes along much later and does something very similar to what Moses did. Mark 2, 6 and 7. Some of the scribes were sitting there, questioning in their hearts, why does this man speak thus? It's blasphemy. Who can forgive sins but Eloah alone? That being the singular of Elohim, Eloha or El. And here Yahshua is accused of forgiving sins, which he probably did freely. Has he forgiven yours? In doing so, he fulfilled the words of the scribes, for he had been capable of forgiving sins, at least back to the time of the Exodus. Exodus 33:18. He then said, please show me your radiance, kavodeka. Yahweh said, I shall make all my goodness pass before you, and before you I shall pronounce the name of Yahweh. And I am gracious to those to whom I am gracious, and I take pity on those whom I take pity. But my face, he said, you can't see. For no human being can see me and survive. Then Yahweh said, here's a place near me. You'll stand on the rock. And when my radiance passes by, kavodeka, I shall put you in a cleft of the rock and shield you with my hand until I have gone past. Oh, this is a death sentence. Unless you get into the cleft of the rock, when Yahweh passes too close, then I shall take my hand away, and you will see my back, but my face will not be seen. Exodus 33:18 and following. When properly translated, we learn that our Elohim is radioactive. It sounds like a radioactivity to me. John reiterates this in his prologue. No one has ever seen Yahweh, the only Son, who is in the bosom of the Father. He has made him known, including his name. And no one can even look at Yahweh in his substance without risking blindness and death. Back to John 5 and 37, the Father who sent me has himself borne witness to me. His voice you have never heard. His form you have never seen. Skip to the next chapter, John 6:46. Not that anyone has seen the Father except him who is from Elohim. He has seen the Father. Why is it that all human beings, if they see the Father, they're going to die, except for one, the one that descended from the sky, came down from a higher dimension? Is this Yahshua? He makes the Father known? Well, they didn't use the term Father very often. before he came along. We understand that nobody has seen Yahweh who is ineffable. He can't be described. I've known of Yahweh my whole life, and I can't describe him. I've had people in church ask me about him. One in particular told me that, I said, what's your conception of Yahweh? She said, I see him as an old man, long beard, sitting on a throne. I see him as a man. I said, lady, would you believe me if I told you he's not a man? The woman was shocked. She had never considered she was a good believer too. She never considered the makeup of Yahweh. He or she or it is incapable of being seen if he, she, or it doesn't want to be seen, since he is Shekinah, radiation, kavod. Although if he wills that someone see him when he moves, the result isn't so much sight, but fear and terror. The beloved disciple knew this because this is what he wrote. But he also knew that many had seen some version of Yahweh, or at least the Malach, the messenger, the angel of Yahweh, mentioned at least 60 times in the scripture. But now consider this. And I spoke a little of this before. Exodus 24, 9 through 11. What a scene we have here. Then Moshe and Aaron and Nadav and Abihu and 70 of the elders of Israel went up, and they saw the El of Israel. And he did not lay his hand on the chief men of the people of Israel, but they beheld Elohim and ate and drank. Yahweh said to Moses, come up to me on the mountain and wait there. So we have somehow a Yahweh down here having lunch with famous men. And then Yahweh speaks to Moses, who's having lunch with Yahweh from up in the sky. Tells him, when you get done, come on up here. Wait there. Here, Yahweh is seen and heard and eats and drinks. Moshe, Sarah, and a host of prophets also see Yahweh. Take a look at Genesis 18, 1 through 15, for instance. I think that's the passage where Yahweh and two companions are coming to lunch. Since there are two Yahwehs, no doubt about it, the heavenly and the earthly is also known as the Son of Man. These seen persons provides a perfect description of the two Yahwehs, the Father and the Son, or the Elohim and the messenger, both bearing the same memorial name, Yahu or Yah. Again, we're going to refer to Yahshua's speech in John 5 and 19. But Yahshua answered and said to them, timeless truth I tell you, or Amen, Amen. The Son of Man cannot do anything of his own will, but the thing that he sees the Father is doing. For those things that the Father does, these also the Son does like him. From the Aramaic Bible in plain English. The one seen and heard here is the messenger of Yahweh. No other explanation. If it was Yahweh from the sky, everybody at the lunch would be dead. because he is Shekinah. He's got Shekinah all over him. He's irradiated. The messenger is also known in the Middle Judaism period as the Son of Man, pre-existing before the birth of the Bethlehemite, doing the work of his father. But I wish I could explain it better. This oneness or duality is a divine mystery. We can't explain it, though the Catholics can in their creeds. They make it simple. The Trinity is all one substance. But no one can explain it, but perhaps Yahshua himself. Proverbs 30, you know what I'm going to read here, 4 and 5. These are the words of Agar, son of Jacques of Massa. Few questions. Who has ascended to heaven and descended? 2, who has established all the ends of the earth? 3, what is his name? And you know the last one. 4, what is his son's name? Surely you know. The answer is still a mystery to the church, seeing as how the name has been banished from the liturgy, as we talked about last week, since 2007, when the Pope, what was that Pope? Benedictine? Yeah, Benedictine the 16th. Funny thing, he was somebody that helped get the name in their liturgy, in their Bibles. And then 2007, he wrapped it up. And I'm sure that he did it for a good reason. Pope Benedict never did anything for a selfish or unimportant reason. Nevertheless, Yahshua replies to the first question, who has ascended to the sky and descended? I tried to avoid heaven, that word, but really what's behind that is nothing but sky. Sky. Here's how he does it. John 3:13. No one has ascended into the Shamayim, but he who descended from the Shamayim, the Ben Adam. That is another name for this go-between, Ben Adam and the Son of Man, or Son of Adam. Yahshua is referring to himself as the Ben Adam in this passage, the Son of Man, the Son. This title, Son of Man, was used in the Gospels, how many times? 150 times. He refers to himself as the Ben Adam, or the Son of Man. The only way you're going to be able to understand well what that term means, and you really should, but we don't have time for it here, but you can find out very quick, is to let me send you a copy of Enoch if you don't have one, and read the parables of Enoch. Then you're going to be able to see very well what the job of the Son of Man is. As Enoch was one of the sons of man, I think Zechariah was designated that. But mainly it comes around in the New Testament because it's explained in Enoch. And the parables of Enoch came along late, sometime in the 1st century. They're not in the Dead Sea Scrolls. They came along after. The prophet responds to the second question, who has established all the ends of the earth? In John 1, 2, and 3. He was in the beginning with Elohim. All things came to be through him, and without him, nothing could have come into existence. Personal question for you. Can you believe this? Can you believe that all things came to be through him? Now, in this verse, obviously, it's talking about Yahshua, the Word, the Devar. I have a shockingly hard time believing that, because my Elohim is too small in the natural. My Elohim is too puny. And my Savior, well, was he a failure? Why didn't he call down angels? Maybe he couldn't. I'm just thinking. Questions 3 and 4. 3, what is his name? And 4, what is his son's name? Surely you know. We go back to John 5, yet again, 39, 40 to 47. You search the scriptures because you think that in them you have eternal life. But it is they that bears witness to me. This is Yahshua talking about, I think, talking about the Malach of Yahweh, the messenger of Yahweh. Yet you refuse to come to me that you may have life. I know that you have not the love of Yahweh within you. For I have come in my Father's name, and you do not receive me. If another comes in his own name, him you will receive. Do not think that I shall accuse you to the Father. It is Moshe who accuses you, on whom you set your hope. As an aside, what hope have we in Moses today? What hope is in Moshe? Generally none. No hope in Moses. He's dead. He'll be back at the resurrection of the dead. You've got an appointment to die. And then comes the judgment. Where are all these people that have died? They're dead. They're dead. They see nothing, know nothing, but they are, in a sense, awaiting the resurrection of the dead. That's a different ball of wax that we should talk about sometime. Again, the fourth question answered. If you believe in Moses, you would believe in me, for Moses wrote of me. What else could he be talking about? Except the prophecy of the one to come, which of course is understood as Yahushua or Joshua, Moses' successor. But here Yahshua turns that on its head and takes Moses out of the equation. For, he says, Moses wrote of me. But if you don't believe his writings, how will you believe my words? So Yahshua is claiming to be the person who Moshe promised to take his place, becoming the new Moshe, the new lawgiver. There is a lot of proof, I might say, of this as well in the Gospels. For instance, back to John 5:43, you've heard that it was said, thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thine enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for them that persecute you. He is rebuking Moshe. You've heard what it was said. You love your neighbor, hate your enemy. Yeah, it's right in the Torah. But I say, this is contradictory. I say, you don't do it that way. You don't do what the Torah says on that. Love your enemies and pray for them that persecute you. And there's example after example. Not only, that might not even be John 5. Don't I remember this from Matthew 5:43? Let me know, Steve, if you're still there. It's just one example of Yahshua correcting the law of Moses to reveal himself as the new lawgiver. Again, we find the scriptures that Yahshua was using are replete with references to the Malach of Yahweh, that is Yahshua, who has the ability to forgive sins and who has the name of Yahweh in him, but who is not Yahweh. Yahshua, he's a horse of a different color. Why do you call me good? No one is good except Elohim alone. Mark 10:18, King James Version. In summary for this section, the Almighty Elohim, plural, is Yahweh Elohim, and his son and namesake, Yahshua ben Yahweh Elohim. The cherubim, seraphim, and malachim are also of the Elohim family, not so close as father and son, as are any of those born of spirit. I hope you. I'll leave you with a scripture for tonight. We'll finish this up Thursday. When I look at thy heavens, the work of thy fingers, I love this passage, the moon and the stars that thou hast established. Who is Adam? Or Aramaic, who is Enosh? That thou art mindful of him, and the Ben Adam, that thou dost care for him. Yet thou hast made him a little lower than the angels, than the Elohim. Actually, that must be the word that's in there. And dost crown him with kavod and honor, esteem and honor. Okay. I have a prayer request for you. Yes, I sure do. Let me take a look at the chat first. Yes. Matthew 5:43. Thank you, brother. I thought this is a funny thing coming out of John 5. I don't remember it. Yeah, they're the same. Yahshua, Joshua, same thing.